Patreon. Did Jesus Exist series. We are MythVision. Did Jesus exist? With Dr. Robert M. Price. Many make the claim he was born of a woman. And of course, it would be seriously kind of funny to me if I was writing you, hey, look, Joe over here, he exists, and hey, he was born of a woman, Dr. Bob. Do you have any comments on this whole born of a woman? It sounds strange. Why would you even need to say that?
Yeah, it seems to me, it's like I was reading something the other day when they asked basically, why is Pontius Pilate mentioned in the Nicene Creed? I mean, you could say Jesus was crucified, but why put it in the great ecumenical creed of the church that, yeah, it was Pontius Pilate what done it? He says it's because there was an ongoing dispute as to when Jesus died, and they're trying to anchor it in a particular narrative where, it must have been during the tenure of Pontius Pilate, because there were other estimates around. Well, this is the same sort of thing. Who would bother to say, well, yeah, my opponent, Donald Trump, was born, he had a mother. Does anybody doubt that? In the case of Galatians and Jesus, it sounds to me that this is an anti-Marcionite insertion. That it may, the whole born of the law thing, that might be part of it too, but it's not as overtly ridiculous as pointing out that the guy had a mother. And because Marcion, the arch-Paulinist of the early church, said that he didn't, that Jesus descended from heaven in bodily form as an adult, albeit a body, kind of like the spiritual body business in 1 Corinthians 15, that it was a body of celestial flesh, like the spiritual body versus the natural body in 1 Corinthians 15. And that's not the only bit of funny business in Galatians, but it seems to me that Galatians is basically a Marcionite work. In fact, in an astonishing passage, Tertullian said, Marcion discovered the epistle to the Galatians. Well, I guess that could mean he was surprised when he first read it, but it says he discovered the epistle to the Galatians, which puts me in mind of Joseph Smith discovering the Book of Mormon and other examples of the guys in the Jerusalem temple clearing it out and discovering the Book of the Law and bringing it to Josiah. Well, obviously they wrote it and said it was old and we're in trouble for not having heeded it and so on. So I think it really is Marcionite. I even suspect that Marcion wrote chapters 3 through 6, and that the business about Paul going to Jerusalem to set his gospel before those who were esteemed pillars actually reflects Marcion's trip from Asia Minor to Rome, to the authorities there, to set out his message because he was hoping to be elected Bishop of Rome. And he brought a huge contribution to seal the deal, just as Galatians says Paul was required to take up an offering among his congregations for the home office in Jerusalem, and that was a condition of recognition. Chapters 1 and 2 were written by a Marcionite to refute the book of Acts. I did not go immediately to Jerusalem. Who says you did? Luke says so. And so forth. I did not get told by any human source like Ananias of Damascus. No, I got it directly from Christ. And so I think it's basically Marcionite, but then people like Tertullian began to interpolate it, to domesticate it for Orthodox Catholic use, because Marcionism was so popular that they figured they better try to co-opt it rather than combat it. And so they said, well, all right, I guess having a Christian testament wouldn't be a bad idea, to add it to the old instead of replacing the old with it like Marcion wants to do. But there's some pretty heretical things in there, so we better pad them out and so forth, and that this was one of those things. We want to counteract the Marcionite view that Jesus was not born, just descended from heaven. This is a similar problem to why Matthew and Luke both have genealogies of Jesus which don't agree and cannot be made to agree, but both also have Jesus divinely conceived of the Holy Spirit with no human father. If that's the case, what's the point of the Joseph genealogy? It has no more relation to Jesus than Nero did. And so there's this ongoing problem. If you're saying, well, yeah, in the Marcionite conflict, you're saying, oh, Jesus did too have a mother. And in the genealogy thing, you're saying, well, he had a mother, but he didn't have a father other than God. But if you want to make a big deal out of it, here's the genealogies, take your pick. And similar problem.
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought that would be a problem, you know, him being born of a woman. Why would that ever have even been an issue? Which makes it's a strange thing that someone would even come up with these ideas that Jesus descended as is, as a full heavenly being, so to speak, and come down. It sounds like Philippians still has that reference in there. And I think even Dr. Ehrman agrees, except he does it backwards. Whereas you will say there is a euhemerization process, he's saying there's a legendary process. There's this legendizing of a historical man. You're saying they're making a historical man out of something that's purely myth or purely legend. Whatever you'd like, however you'd like to say that. So that is interesting. Why is that a problem? And then I guess it's weird to me. Maybe you can spell this out. Marcion was not Gnostic, was he? Or was he?
Hard to say. People usually categorize him as a Gnostic because he is the demiurge as opposed to the actual father and so forth. And people say, well, he had a kind of an anti-worldly view. He opposed marriage, though he said if you were married, you shouldn't get divorced. He held a dim view of the Old Testament, though not as bad as Gnostics, who just ridiculed it. But it depends on whether there was a secret Marcionite doctrine. And we usually don't hear it discussed that way because there were Marcionite churches. There were no Valentinian or other Gnostic churches. They met as little prayer groups or study groups within mainstream congregations. But that's why they could survive as long as they did. They hid. That's what the Thomas 13 is all about, where Thomas has proven himself Jesus equal. Jesus takes him aside, tells him three things. He leaves. The disciples gather around Thomas and say, what did he tell you? He said, I'm sorry, guys, if I told you even one of the things he told me, you would stone me to death. So don't tell the outsiders. Well, so Gnostics were like that. They wouldn't just blab the extra stuff they believed. But Marcionites might have too. They might have waited till you had sufficient catechism, because one writer, I doubt if I can remember his name, but he was an Armenian bishop or something a few centuries later, who talks about a secret teaching of the Marcionites. So in that case, I'd say they were Gnostics, and I'm guessing that's probably true. Can't think of the name.